Hello, and welcome to the Vulnerability Junkies podcast. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jamie. On this podcast, we talk about the scary, vulnerable parts of our personal and professional growth, our identities as second-generation Asian Canadians, and talking about our feelings. How well do you know your close friends' life stories?
On today's episode, we revisit the School of Life's conversation menus and share the themes we see in each other's journeys. Let's get into it.
Hello.
What up?
How are you feeling today, Kevin?
How am I feeling? Pretty tired. Physically like a 4, emotionally like a 6.
Okay.
What am I feeling? Frazzled. Yeah, it's been a very long day. Started the day off woke up, went to the gym, didn't sleep that much, was tired, had to do a lot of emotional self-processing in the morning. And then had just work, face grindstone for 10 hours, came home, cooked, ate, and now we're doing this. So
Packed day.
yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think physically I'm at a 4 or 5. Emotionally, I'm at a 7.5.
Whoa.
Yeah, I feel pretty good actually.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, I think I really just needed a full reset of not having too much stuff to do on the weekend. I feel like I've been kind of running on fumes for a few weeks. And I just feel the energy and the ease coming back. I just don't feel anxious right now, and it's really nice. So there's a lot of different things going on there, but I do think that having space is a pretty key element.
It's true. Having a life sucks. It just takes up so much time and space. Just give it back to me.
Yeah, it's tricky. All right, so for today, we're going to try something a little different. A couple episodes back, we went through some questions from this conversational menu. So these are cards from School of Life. They just have really interesting conversation topics on them. But this time we're going to do it a little differently. The questions are all designed so that you ask the other person, but we're going to do it instead so that the other person has to answer as if they were us. So this is going to be very much a game in sharing our perspective on how we think the other person thinks, which is going to be, for me anyway, a little bit scarier. So I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. Well put. All right, yeah, let's do it. The way that this card game works is that there's many different menus, each follow a different theme. And so the card that we picked up today is about culture. So all these questions today have to do with culture in some way, shape, or form. So do you want to kick us off?
Sure. All right. So if you were me, how would you answer this question? If you were to write a book, what might it be like and what would it be about?
Okay. So what do I think it would be like for you to write a book, and what do I think it would be about?
Oh, because I interpreted what might it be like to mean what would the book be like, but I think you interpreted it to be what would the process of writing a book to be like. I think let's start with yours. I think that's more interesting.
I think it depends on the topic to a degree.
Well, what do you think I would choose as a topic?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say the vast majority of your blog posts have been technical writing. And then there's 1 or 2 that explore kind of more emotional concepts. Probably something to do with Canto. I'm going to go with that.
Whoa.
Just because we've talked about it so many times. And several times you've mentioned that you have a lot to share, I think, about your learnings, the challenges, the intricacies of the language. Yeah, go with that.
And then by your description, what would it be like?
I'm imagining that it would be exciting, kind of at least in the early kind of onset. And then I'm imagining that you would bump into some of the cultural challenges that we've kind of talked about, but I'm imagining that you would get into your own head a little bit too much and start to overthink things, and then be like, man, am I justified in saying these things? Is it okay? Et cetera, et cetera. And then there would be a little bit of a challenge there, but that ultimately I think it would be a good process. And I think that what you have to share, I think, would be beneficial and that at least I would resonate with it probably. Yeah. Yeah. And then imagining it would take like, I don't think it would be a long book, maybe like on the order of 50 to 100 pages. And I think it would take you 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, cool. Fascinating. That topic was not even on my radar when I looked at this question. Like nowhere at all. Although, like I think that in order to do that, I would have to be in a very different headspace than I am now. But the idea is actually pretty appealing to me. The reality is I probably just wouldn't write books nowadays. I would much rather write a series of blog posts or possibly like scripts for videos to make with you. But it is true that I do have a lot of thoughts about how interesting of a language Cantonese is and just very real struggles of trying to learn it. I think that you're definitely right that I would be excited about the prospect at the beginning, and I would eventually possibly rapidly get very into my head being like, oh God, like, can I really do this? Like, is this going to be interesting to anyone? Like, what, am I going to like run into problems of cultural appropriation accusations? And like, it just would immediately hit up against a bunch of my own like cultural identity struggles. So I think that probably was all spot on. 1 to 2 years sounds pretty accurate too. And I also agree, I wouldn't want to write a really long book. This is not 100% true, but almost all my favorite books are relatively short. Like usually on like the, I don't know, like 200 to 300 page range with a couple like bangers that are like 100 pages. So yeah, I think that's like pretty much spot on. The actual thing so you're right also in saying that like my writing over time has drifted a lot more towards the emotional and interpersonal and away from the deeply technical. But I do still find myself repeatedly pulled to try to merge them, to like write about technical subjects, but in like an emotional or more emotional way. Like even in my later technical writing, the thing that I really try to actively imbue into the writing itself is this intense feeling of curiosity that was driving me to write it. And the kind of joy of discovery. So I think a lot of times when you read about technical material, it like totally pushes out the humanistic elements. But the reality is like a lot of these things were really hard to figure out. Were figured out because there was a person or some people that were so intensely obsessed with solving these problems. And that kind of obsession has a very emotional quality to it that I think unfortunately doesn't usually come through in people's writing. So for me, that could either manifest as writing about a technical subject and just trying to weave that sense of wonder through the writing itself, or it can manifest in a kind of like more narrative science fiction. So like a book that gets referenced all the time, especially nowadays, is The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson. And it does a really good job. So like, Neil Stephenson is really good at constructing worlds to explore an idea and making those worlds really interesting and using the characters to really lend an emotional quality to the conceptual things being explored. He's awful at plot writing, and he can never like finish a book. And the books have unfortunately just gotten longer and longer and longer and longer. But Diamond Age and Snow Crash were both like super, super good explorations of some core concept using a narrative vehicle. And I wish I could write like that. So I think that I might choose one of these facets. So yeah, I feel like pretty seen. Definitely all the elements that you mentioned are true for me. So what would Kevin write as a book? I don't think you really would write a book, to be honest. I think you would probably, there's just so many other mediums I think you find more compelling, like YouTube videos. But if you were going to write a book, I can imagine something akin to the video you did about fear. So like the really deep interweaving of pop culture and your own personal emotional growth. So I can imagine you writing like a self-help book. All right, I'm going to try to be specific. Self-help book targeted at like teenage immigrant children with anime references like deeply interwoven all over the place. And maybe not just anime, like just generally pop culture, as like a means to both try to encourage those kids to develop strength, but also kindness to themselves. I think similarly, it would not be a very long book. I think you'd want it to be really, really pithy and dense, but also have some kind of like, I think you'd want the design of it to have like kind of like austerity to it, you know, like not like it would be like the opposite aesthetically of like a like a picture book, it would be like plain, very minimalistic cover, just like the book, and then just like fat margins, like lots of negative space, and then the lessons are all relatively concise, but still like very interwoven with these pop culture references. Yeah, I can just imagine like the life lessons from anime that I return to every month, and just like a series of 100 like 1 or 2 page anecdotes from your life, and the thing from your life that was happening, the corresponding inspiration from anime, and then the lesson that you learned in the process. That's what I'm imagining you'd produce as a book.
Sounds pretty dope, to be honest. Yeah. I think topic's pretty spot on. I think a lot of the kind of writing for myself that I do, like 95% of it in the last many months has been on this exact topic. So that checks out. It's also just sort of reflection of what I've been thinking about lately. As if you've listened to other episodes in the past, you'll get a sense of that this topic is pretty top of mind for me. So that totally checks out. I actually didn't think about the pop culture thing, but it's a vibe. I like it. I like it a lot. The framing you had around like this is the experience. This is the thing I learned. This is an example from my life, and here's an example from an anime that I watched.
Yeah.
That checks out. I like that a lot. It's a good vibe. And I do think that, to your point, I would probably in practice more make a video. But yeah, I think everything else that you described for the book also, I was like, yeah, that's my energy. Like, I was literally thinking the word pithy before you used the word pithy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like it short, concise, to the point. I also like that you described the aesthetic of the book. It also checks out. I think you definitely want some negative space on your pages. The worst is when things are densely packed together.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do like the like plain looking but simple aesthetic.
Yeah.
That's like, I like that. It's not overly egregious in your face, like razzle dazzle, but you can, if you look at it a little bit longer, there's like an elegance and simplicity that I think is really nice. So yeah, it checks out. Nice, dude.
I'm glad you liked my description of the aesthetic of this beautiful magical tome.
Nice. Nice. Sick. All right.
I'm going to pass the card back.
All right. In what ways and when have you been dishonest about your cultural tastes?
Whoa. Oh, man. This is really hard. I honestly, like, nothing is coming up for me because I think you're generally pretty straightforward. Like, I think if someone's talking about something you don't know anything about, you just flip into question asking rather than pretend you know a lot.
I guess like my interpretation of dishonest was kind of sometimes I'll just like nod along or like
I see
marginally pretend that I might be like very mid on something, but then like I might like, and if someone comes up to me really enthusiastic, I like don't want to like burst their bubble. The most common example for me that comes up is like music, where people will like express, I guess just like want to show me their music. And in moments where I'm kind of like, yeah, it's not really doing it for me.
Oh yeah.
But they're just like, hey, check out my like this is my favorite song right now. I'll do my best to like, even if like I don't really like it that much, I'll do my best to like try and talk to them about it, or like kind of not burst their bubble and just tell them like I did not like this at all. There have been few moments of honesty that I have come to regret.
This is the part I want to hear.
In the past, someone showed me actually just recommended me a show. I watched it, and then after we had a conversation about it, and they were like, so what do you think? We talked about the story and all that stuff. I had this like kind of interesting moment in between where I like predicted the end.
Yeah.
By like half-ish way through.
Oh no.
But either way, it was kind of like this conclusion. I was like, what do you think? Like, what would you give it out of 10? And I was like, I was like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what about you? And then immediately the response was like, oh, it was like a 9 or a 10 for me. And then I like at that moment, it immediately clicked, okay, yeah, I guess this is why it was recommended to me. Like,
yeah.
What? No one really recommends things that they also didn't really like. And And then I
I'd be
kind of had
pissed
a
off, if they're like, it was like a 5, and you're like, why did you rate them? That would be ridiculous.
yeah, exactly. I had that exact moment,
Yeah.
like realization, and all the gears clicked, and I was like, okay, maybe not that I would have wanted to lie, but like, like it just
Different
felt like,
framing.
yeah, it just felt kind of bad afterwards. But yeah, that was a moment that sticks out where again, it's like, yes, I was honest, and then just oof, ouch, didn't mean to do that. But
Yeah, that's why I
yeah,
was struggling to find examples of dishonesty. Like, I feel like you are actually much more likely to have that problem, you know? Just being like,
rough.
I don't get this. Like, why is this good? than
Yeah,
than like pretending to really enjoy something that you're not.
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, before we totally tangent, if someone were to make a film of bits of your life, what might be key elements of the plot?
Okay. The training for this one. All right, I'm gonna think through some of the elements, and then I'm gonna try to figure out how these would be key plot elements. So, in the mix, I feel like first starting to watch anime, pretty crucial, pivotal moment in your life.
The inciting incident.
Yeah, the inciting incident.
Oh my god.
Similarly, badminton,
Okay.
introduction to Olympic weightlifting, also probably pretty key.
Whoa.
Those all feel like they could be like in one collective. I'm imagining those actually. At some point in the movie, someone asked you, "So, like, how did you get to be so intense?" And it's just like you do a flashback, and it's each of these elements, and you going from like tiny child looking at the people being like, "Yes, I want to become this," and just like jumping from like observing the anime to watching someone in real life doing it to like training montage of you doing that thing and doing that in like 3 or 4 different domains.
Wow.
So imagining that like there has to be training montages in your movie. Absolute necessity.
Amazing. Love that.
Yeah. Like you could have like a meta training montage where it's a training montage of training montage. It's just like
Don't kill
I'm
me.
imagining like it's like the 4-screen split screen of like all of them happening in parallel.
Nice.
So that's like there's like that element. There has to be like a Hack the North arc
Wow.
of you building up your hackathon empire. So this one I think is not training montage. This one is you start off totally naive to the world of hackathons, and then you start going through them. You're like kind of somewhat nervously enter in, but then just like notice yourself fired up by the environment around you. And eventually it dawns on you, I can make this. I can make one of these two. So imagining you assembling your team heist style to construct Hack the North. So that's another I think key element from your life. I think struggle to secure your first PM position would have to be in the mix as well. And like at some point you have to give respect to the life story element of rejecting rejections. So like you're still one of the only people I know that has successfully negotiated from a rejection letter to a job. And you've done this twice, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That's just like totally absurd. So just for sheer uniqueness would definitely include that. Other key elements. Yeah, and then you get the romance arcs for sure. I think I'm gonna omit the details here to spare you.
Much
But
appreciated.
I think that those were both. Well, I think all of them have been pivotal in really encouraging you down the path of emotional growth. So
For sure.
yeah, I can imagine like it is like a dramatized version of the whole situation. Yeah, I don't know how you would, in an interesting cinematic dramatic fashion, introduce the need for like self-kindness into the protagonist's arc. Like the lazy way of doing it is you have a dream and there's like little Kevin in the dream. But I think a more interesting way of doing it would be like through like a scene of observation of strangers where you just notice parents being like really harsh to their kid and just having like your main character like just watching this scene, and then at first like when the pressure first builds up, you're like, yeah, like that kid's gonna grow, just like nodding along, and then just the parents depart, you notice the kid just like extremely distraught, and then like kind of turn inwards, and then like the character like has a moment of reflection, and then you have like a like an older brother or something come along and then comfort the child and see that the kid becomes energized again. I think like weaving something into that where it's very low on dialogue, but reflects in your own life the transition from feeding purely off negative energy to wanting more encouraging elements in yourself. I think that is also like going to be, that's really, really recent, but I think that you are at some point going to see that as like a pretty significant inflection point. What am I missing? I think there's like something in here about relationship to religion in high school, but I still honestly don't know that much about that dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to highlight exactly what that trajectory was. Yeah, I think those are the, oh, and you definitely have to have just generally the background setting elements of growing up with your parents and growing up like of relatively low means, but parents that were really proactive in finding ways to make it never feel like that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
And just, yeah, just like chock full of like Hong Kong influence references in the initial household set.
With a lot of themes, but definitely
Dude,
very
you're a complex man.
got some main character energy. Yeah, no, I think those are we've gotten all of them, like in terms of like what I would consider broad themes of my life.
Mhm.
I think you covered all of them. Yeah, there's nothing more to say. Now we should have to write the script. I think that's basically it. Yeah, those are probably it's like all my interests, all of my biggest growth arcs, and they're like respective themes. Starting Hack the North, job security, and like breaking into the industry that I work in. Sports is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I love training montages.
I know. I know
So-
you do.
Yeah.
I know you watch the My Hero training arc and it fires you up.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's actually several
Sure.
that I rewatch sometimes just to get myself pumped up. Like the Rock Lee versus Gara fight.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Classic. My boy's doing like 1,000 push-ups. I'm like, yes. And then like his teacher like watches him train in secret and he's like, oh wow, he's working hard. All right, I'll come back later. Comes back, still training.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the energy, dude. That's the energy. Just want someone to see me that way.
Mm.
And then this all dovetails into the whole, wait, you want other people to see you that way? Wait, maybe you can see you that way. Maybe that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems pretty good too. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I don't really have much to add.
Nailed it.
I'm trying to think, like, what else? Yeah, the parental stuff's in there. The romance stuff's in there. I guess friends
Oh, yeah.
might be the only other thing, but I guess maybe they're kind of a backdrop, continuous backdrop for all the things. Definitely no
Yeah.
getting through any of the arcs without friend support.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really hard to make a movie about friendship.
I agree. They're usually just kind of like the cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had another thing to say. I just forgot now. Something that you had said that reminded me of something. It's gone. Yeah.
Man, now I just want movies of all my friends' lives. I just want dramatized hour-and-a-half versions of all of my friends' lives. This is amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
You should do it.
I don't know, like, yeah, maybe like 10 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, the economics of doing this with Gen AI is actually going to make it work.
Whoa.
I was on a trip with a bunch of friends recently, and we played, not really a game, but we just like went around and told life stories. And earlier versions of this I played, we called it like 4-minute life stories, where it would be pretty rapid fire. But this time we had so much time on this long ass hike that we just like let people be as long as the stories naturally were. So they ended up being like 30 to 40 minutes. But now I want to do the same version of it. So like one problem with that game is that you can only really play this game like one time per group of friends. And then if you have like one or two new people in the group, then you want to hear their stories, but you don't want to like rehear all of your friends' stories. But you could modify it so that, all right, you two have known each other for 8 years, you tell each other stories.
Yeah.
And then it's more interesting.
it's a great variation.
So I'm going to pull that out at some point.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Shall I do you? Do you want me to do you?
Yeah, okay. I'm interested to hear what your vision for my biopic is.
Well, I think I have a healthy respect for, I think you can only really fit one, maybe two themes into a movie.
No, man, for yours, I'm cramming all of it in. It's all going in.
I'm like, damn, bro. This is like 6 movies. Okay. I don't know where to start. I think evolution of family dynamics
Mm.
would be very intense, but I think it would make for a great movie.
Mm.
Just the evolution of the story and everything that's happened, without going into details, just like lots of turns
Mm-hmm.
and quite a journey. So I think that would make for a really interesting story. And I think the ultimate narrative at the end would be also very inspiring. Because I think I think you've had to work through a lot. And I think you've come out the other side, like still as optimistic as one can be. Having gone through just like kind of like a loss of naivete in a way of just like, you don't get family's family, but like the relationships as all relationships, you don't get for free necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough. But yeah, I think you net it out, I think, in a really good place. I think that the story arc would be interesting to follow, and there is like true conflict, both like between intra and interpersonal conflict. And I think you've come out the other side in a pretty good place. So I think it would be that would make for a very interesting story arc. I think your career path, I think, would also be super interesting, where we've talked a bit about how like it started off with just kind of you following your passions and your interests, and that kind of by happenstance becoming like leading into a pretty lucrative profession.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming out and then getting to the other side of, I guess, that success, and then now having to kind of contend with, I don't want to say like more existential problems, but just that kind of like that like search for meaning and purpose that I think is pretty universal to the human experience. I think that would be very relatable and interesting to explore. We talked about the journey to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That could definitely be a movie in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You deciding to go, actually going, landing, being quarantined for a while.
Yeah.
Starting to poke out, establishing life in new city. Yeah. I think I can literally see scenes in my mind of just like, that is an archetype of a movie. I think that has definitely been made. It's like it would be branded a coming of age story. Yeah.
Well, this is the first time it's been long enough now that I feel nostalgic for it. It was like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But I already feel the contrast and like, I can hear some of the sounds of Hong Kong that are very distinct, like the sound of the light crossing, okay, the crosswalks. It's like a very distinct sound. Yeah, like the sound of the bustle in the subway. Whoa, very interesting.
Yeah. The ending would be very artistic. I think the whole meta conflict throughout would be like the cultural struggle for sure, but ultimately following the arc of you, the undertone, right, of you learning the language and ultimately deciding to cut it short versus the original plan, and then you coming home, and that would be a very artistic place to cut it. It's like we don't give the audience the satisfaction of like, so how did it end? You have to like figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yourself.
The Inception did the top drop kind of ending.
A little bit like that, or you just say I want to leave the audience because I hate cliffhangers, so I kind of want to imbue it to other people of just like you would like move back, but then it's like TBD, like whether or not like did he find happiness? Was it even about the language? Was it mostly just about finding a place that you belong? Did he find it? I don't know.
Whoa.
That would be it, I think.
Whoa, man.
Yeah. I think this is the stuff that like movies are about, you know, these kind of broader themes and struggles. We could definitely also do a good one about like just the struggle with depression.
Yes.
That was also definitely a time, very intrapersonal conflict, definitely with interpersonal conflict scattered throughout.
Yeah. There's like very little good media about like mental illness that portrays it as real, but also not like linear. Like I think there's some media about mental health where it starts okay and just goes down, it's bad, and it just like ends up being really sad. And there's other media where it's just like the better version is people just like kind of living with it, but it's still like very centered. But to me, the most interesting kind of media around this is like where it plays a significant role, but it doesn't define the character. Like the character has other really interesting traits.
I see. Yeah. Like it's just like they're a character that lives with depression,
Right.
but that's
Exactly.
not like the only thing that happens in the movie.
Exactly.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's true. Kind of like showing them more just like mundane, quote unquote, like everyday struggles and kind of giving visibility to that,
Yeah.
but it not being like their entire personality.
Exactly. Yeah.
I like that. It's very humanizing.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't, because then it takes them from, it makes them not just a caricature.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
it like emphasizes that like these are real people.
The point is not, this is the character with depression.
Right.
It's like, this really interesting person has depression and it like shapes their life in this interesting way.
That's right.
Yeah, like that. I think this was one of my favorite books that does a really good job of this is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green.
Mhm.
And it's like very intentional and it's very based on, well, it's heavily influenced by his own experiences as someone that has like really challenging, intrusive thoughts.
Mhm.
And the character is, if you like took away their facets of their mental illness from their book, the character would still be really interesting as a person, but like the book wouldn't really work. So the way that I like to think about it is in that book, it's almost like the mental illness is like a character. It's like a separate character that interacts with this other facet of the main character in the same way that, like, you know how in some media the weather is almost like a character, like it actually like
Mhm.
plays an active role.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that, like these things, viewing these things as like forces of nature, but not the core of a character. And that book does a really good job of that. Yeah. I think that you like definitely nailed some of the big elements, the career pathing, and like some of this is like a lot for me to listen to because a lot of it's are ongoing or like not like fully resolved. Like the Hong Kong one, still like definitely a huge step, but I don't know how happy I am with this art house ending of is he gonna be happy? Like, did he find a place of belonging? Like, no, I just want to like find the happy ending. Like, just give me the boring, straightforward happy ending here.
I don't know, man. All I'm hearing is that my movie ending reflects reality.
I don't want it to. Yeah. And then I think that the depression thing is definitely was really influential, and it's like in a way that like going through like a major depressive episode, like wow, it's been like 5 years now. It's been like 6 years now. But it is really weird to recognize like how much it really did affect my life in a way that like I think akin to what I was describing with the book. It feels to me like it affected my life in the same kind of intense way that other people have, or that forces of nature like COVID did. Like it was just like a total forced reorientation of my worldview. And it's a really weird thing to not be able to really compare experience. So like, I know for sure that I don't feel the same way as I did when I was in the depth of it, but trying to answer the question, like, have I ever really felt like I did before it hit ever again? It's like, it's pretty hard to know. Like, it's hard to know whether facets of myself just like permanently changed in a way that I can never fully reclaim, or not. I have writings that I have from before then, but it's like hard to compare the visceral sense. And it's now especially long enough ago that like it's really hard for me to definitively know whether something was like permanently changed in me. But that definitely was the part in my life where I started to really directly think about mental health in a way that was not optional anymore. And I think like the larger part of that arc was after that trying to systematically work on different sources of anxiety in my life and just trying to get them all into a place where they no longer cause me distress. Which is, that's also like a path that I'm still on. It's just that it's getting increasingly amorphous. So I don't know where the narrative version of this goes. Like maybe the movie turns out that, all of these things were just kind of distractions. And ultimately there's like a thing that needs to be more directly confronted, or it could also be the end point is, you realize that they were all distractions in a different sense, and that this is a thing to just like live with. This is just part of you. This is just who I am. But yeah, I think the family dynamics thing is interesting. The career path, definitely very real. Yeah, and then the dating life would also be like the dating life like is one actually to me that has the least like clear narrative. Like I don't even know how to describe that whole structure to anyone. Whereas the other ones had a lot more intentionality behind them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would much rather watch her movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think it's just because like it's like too like by definition too close.
Okay, yeah.
And like too like unresolved.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's different when you're in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like that cliffhangerness that I was describing as a spectator, like you're living it.
Right, exactly. I'm just in that moment right now. So
yeah.
Talk to me in 5 years and then see if I'd want to watch the movie then.
All right. Well, I mean, it's the cool part. You get to go right the ending.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With how you live your life.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm getting pretty tired, so I think I'm gonna call it now.
Yeah, it's true. Same.
How you feeling, man?
I think I'm still like about the same physically, like a 3 now. Emotionally, also about the same. Maybe a little less, like 5 or 6. Just getting a little tired now. I feel very relaxed though. Yeah, less frazzled, kind of settling in. I feel like that was like it's definitely not like the most emotionally intense conversation that we've had, but I think it was a very cozy one.
Yeah. I think physically like a 4, emotionally like I think it's about the same, to be honest, about a 7.5. I think the mood, I also feel pretty relaxed, which is really nice. I think part of that relaxed more specifically is I don't feel rushed. I feel like I have time.
Whoa.
Just, I would like to go sleep, but I don't feel like I must leave right now. Like there's no like urgency behind it, which is really nice.
That is really nice.
And then I feel very like appreciative and seen, and like it is, I don't know, it's always reassuring to know when my friends like remember parts of my story and get me. I feel like you get me.
Nice, dude.
Appreciate that.
Nice, man. Yeah, I do listen from time to time.
You've been known to listen.
Yes, from time to time. I do try sometimes. Nice, man.
All right.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it was fun.
Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is for you in the day. For us, it is bedtime. So, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please help us by leaving a rating on your favorite podcast app. We would really appreciate it because it helps us grow and lets others find the show.
When we're not podcasting, Kevin also makes YouTube videos.
And Jamie has a blog. You can find links to these in the episode description.
The intro music you heard in this episode was made by Harry Dye.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.